Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the digital launch of Click-on Screens at Sculptform. We had a physical launch earlier this month, so last week in our Melbourne studio, and we are very proud to be able to present this to our nationwide clients and audience. We have a lot to cover in this one session. So to take you through, I will shortly pass you over to our Managing Director and Founder, Jeremy Napier, who will talk about why we developed this product and why we brought it out to the market. After that, we'll go to product demonstration, which will be covered by David Scott, our product manager, and he will go a little bit more into detail about product features and what makes it unique to what is currently on the market. We'll also have a guest speaker today, Catherine Keys from Architectus, senior interior designer and a special design specialist, who will give us a little bit of background on what's happening into that space. Now, before I pass you over to Jeremy, I just also wanted to mention we will have some time for Q&A towards the end. If you do have questions, please use the questions tab. So you will see that on the bottom right hand corner of your screen is just to make sure that we can get to those questions towards the end. And if you're not familiar with Sculptform, we're an Australian manufacturer of feature wall and ceiling systems, and we're based in Bendigo, and specialising in making beautiful designs buildable, making them buildable. Today, I'm presenting from Melbourne Design Studio in Melbourne, as well as David and Jeremy are joining us from the Bendigo head office, and I believe Catherine is joining us from Architectus head office as well. So I'll pass you over now to our Managing Director, Jeremy Napier.
You just muted, Jeremy.
Sorry, start again. Rookie mistake. Great to have this opportunity to present to everybody today and show what the latest is from Sculptform, and looking forward to the Q&A session later and to get some interaction from the crowd. So what gave rise to Click-on Screens as a product, and what are we seeing as trends in the market? Well, we're seeing spatial design and zoning within spaces and larger open spaces as quite a trend. The whole scene of interior architecture, so large atriums of commercial base builds, and then biophilic design being incorporated into that. Obviously, the return to work in the workplace is giving rise to changes, and we're finding that there is a requirement for the workplace to be more homely, which is understandable. Another thing was where the linear textures that we provide are being incorporated over glass areas, and the need for our battens to be viewed from all sides or 360 degrees. Also incorporating various engineering requirements also has presented challenges to our traditional products, where you've got wind loads, crowd loads, balustrade loads, and various other things. But we're quite excited where you have the combination of the aesthetic and the practical use of the product and the challenges that presents. So we can say that Click-on Screens is a truly customer or architect-driven product. So we haven't looked at a traditional product category and sought to copy it in any way. We're originators, we're innovators. We are copied far more than what we copy. In fact, we don't copy. So that's by definition is true. And we respond to design intents that are presented to us. So, architects and interior designers come with these beautiful renders and design intents, and we just, as a company, we're just not good at saying no. We're pretty much driven by the heart. We love good design, and we really enjoy the honor of being part of an architectural design. It's always great to know that our little clip is in there, making it all possible. So we, true to our philosophy of making beautiful designs buildable. That's our mission. That's our purpose. That is what we do as a company. So we're all about enabling designers and leveraging their skills, making them or allowing them to unleash their full creativity. That's what we're about. So part of our design process has been the need to create something that's flexible, as well as something that's simple. So simplicity and flexibility, by their very nature, tend to fight against each other. They're conflicting concepts, because it's one thing to create something flexible, but generally that becomes complex. So to come up with a product that is both flexible, so having a very wide range of application, and is simple, is actually very hard to do. So we've had a number of iterations and customer input sessions and prototyping, etc., in order to come up with our final offering that we're showing you today. And finally, whatever we do has to incorporate the click. So I can remember, on a certain Friday afternoon, in one of our product retros with David, and showing concepts of what they'd come up with in our product design team. And it was, well, David, where is the click? And that brought us back to what we are. We're all about the click. So that's who we are. This is what we do. We love simplicity. We're inspired by Apple as a company, and we would aspire to be the Apple of our industry. So look forward to showing you what this is all about, and I will hand over to David. Thank you.
I'll jump in there for a moment, Jeremy, as well. As I mentioned, we have had our physical launch in the studio, so we thought it'd be a good idea to share a little bit of a snippet of how the launch went. Had a lot more, obviously, physical element to it. So just bear with us for, just goes for just over a minute. And then we'll jump into David's presentation.
This new product Click-on Screens is really a response to emergent trends that we see. It's a response to our customers asking for things that we didn't have, with design intents that we loved and we couldn't say no to. So that's classic Sculptform. We're not really no people. We don't say no often enough, probably. And came up with a myriad of applications which our traditional product Click-on battens didn't necessarily cover, both structurally or capability-wise, engineering-wise. You're on mute, Kat.
Sorry about that. I was just mentioning just a short snippet of the events that are happening at the studio. If you are in Melbourne or visiting, please stop by either for events or consultation. You can book any time, and we'll be more than happy to show you around. And now I'll pass you over to David.
Great. Thanks, Kate, and thanks, Jeremy. I just first wanted to explain the difference between click-on battens and click-on screens. So Jeremy's already touched on this. So click-on battens has been our flagship product over many years, and to a certain extent, that's what we are most known for, the linear batten look. the key difference between these two systems, so they look very similar in terms of the batten, but they've got very different functionalities. So Click-on Battens is predominantly a acoustic system or lining for walls and ceilings, and mostly designed to be viewed from a single side. Whereas Click-on Screens, on the other hand, is more of an open batten system, and as Jeremy's already discussed, it's designed to be viewed from all four sides, 360 degrees. So we like to think of it as like an extension of our core Click-on Battens system in terms of functionality. The big idea when we kicked off this development was to come up with a super strong connection that can be mounted to the batten in a variety of different ways in order to maximize its use in application. And what that strength of connection gave us was the ability to push out those tracks as far as possible to get the maximum span and delete any of those, as many of those nasty horizontals as we can. And also what that did is it allowed our screens to be used as part of the fall protection within the architecture. So what we came up with is this, and this clip system is really the foundation of our product offer that we're launching for you today. It's a three-part system. There's a button that attaches to your timber or aluminium batten. There's a metal clip housing which is attached to your mounting rail, and then there's a flexible stainless steel spring in that. And as you pull the two parts together, the spring flattens and snaps over the button. And we've got a little animation to show that nice and clear here. So as you pull that together, as it reaches the center point of the clip, that spring collapses and snaps over the back of the button. So as it rotates around here, you can see that intersection. Thanks for that. So, and what that connection can only be removed by a special removal tool. So that reduces the risk of vandalism. And also the other point I was just going to raise there was around the patents. So this connection is patented here in Australia, and we've also filed patents in the US, Europe, and UK. So we got super exciting times. We've got big plans for this product. So now just moving on to the mounting options. So we got two main clip types. That's the back mounted. That's the one you saw in the animation above, and that's where you want to connect the battens from behind. Generally, where you're connecting to a wall or to a structure from behind. And then we've got the end mounted. That's a slightly more elongated connection for aesthetics, and that's great for connecting to the floor and to the ceiling. And then, of course, you can combine those two clips. So you can connect it to the floor, and then you can go up and you can connect it to a structure above. And I'll go through an example of how that can be done a bit later in the presentation. Just another point here, every batten has a fixed and a floating connection. And this helps with installation for number one, but for number two, everything moves. So buildings move. Every material has a different movement factor for when it's exposed to different temperatures, and they will grow and shrink. So there's a fixed connection which the button snaps into, and then at the base that movement is accounted for. And at the end mount there, you can see it's got a sliding tenon, mortise and tenon style connection at the bottom to take up that site movement. Just wanted to move through a couple of examples of how this can be used. So first, we've got your traditional sort of freestanding screen where it's end mounted to the floor and to the ceiling. This is a great option for breaking up different zones and areas within a bigger space. So you can demarcate those zones without blocking them off, and you still got that connectivity through the open screen. Then we've got staircases and internal atrium balustrading. So we think this is a huge opportunity for the product. And you can see in this example how you've got the lower level there, you've got the balustrade height, but then above you've got the full height barrier. Here's just another example of an internal atrium style application, but you can see how as it comes to the staircase there, it wraps down to create the staircase barrier. And this is the example where you can use the end mount on the floor, and then you move up to get that to that slab edge. You can connect to the slab edge using the back mount. So it just shows the diversity of the product. Then of course, because of the strength of the connection, you're able to use it on facades. So that's just a few examples of how it can be used, and this is the exciting bit for us, is where we put it out to the market and we see what the creative minds do with it. So it's super exciting times. Just to move on to the actual offering itself. So we've got the profile sizes here. We've got quite a simple but diverse profile range here in both solid timber and extruded aluminium. So we've chosen these sizes very specifically to line up with rules of nature, like the golden ratio. So they don't look too thin, that and flimsy. They don't look too chunky. So they're sort of that very well proportioned, happy medium. The aluminium options profiles there are available in our standard high quality wood finishes. And that's a great option for if you've got Group 1 fire requirements present, or you need non-combustibility certificate. That's a good option. It's also great if you want to span a lot further because of the stiffness of aluminium. You can do that. And also a great option if you want that timber element for outdoors, but you don't want the maintenance. It's a great low maintenance option. Okay, the track types. So there's two main track types. First is the 45 by 25 split track, and that one is designed to span between fixings. So between balustrade posts, for example. It's also great for fixing to a masonry wall, where you can fit that nice big masonry anchor in the back of the track there. And because it's split, you've got that in-out adjustment for site tolerance built into it. Then you've got the slim track. That's designed to look as slim as possible, obviously. So it can't span. It's got to be stitched off a lot more. But that's a great option for fixing to your floor and your ceiling. And that one can also curve. So you can use the back mount connection and you can curve it around a substrate. Then the last option there is you can just direct fix those clips onto any substrate. However, with this option, you don't get that advantage of factory spaced and fitted clips. Just want to touch briefly on engineering and compliance. So this is super important. The product is designed and engineered to be able to cope with up to C3 and C5 balustrade ratings under 1170 Australian standard. However, because of the sort of diversity of the product and the amount of ways it can be used, and the different batten materials and sizes, it does require a performance solution still, that final engineering tick off. However, at early design stage, we do have span tables to give designers and architects that confidence that it will pass. It's just that final engineering tick off that's needed. I think that concludes what I was going to say. I think we've now got a little 3-minute video to show the installation of the product.
That's right. I'll just share it, and feel free to add your commentary on that as well.
So this is showing how you mark out for the buttons to be attached to the back of the battens. This is a tool here that we supply to help get your pilot hole central. Screw your button to the batten. showing the end mount using the same tool. This is the mortise and tenon connection showing that slide allowance. Showing fixing the mounting track base to the substructure. This is your mounting track with the clips pre-fitted. You can stitch the two together. Inserting the stainless steel flexible springs into the clip housings. Buttons just simply click in. It's just showing the end mount clip. Showing how to remove a batten using the removal tool. So those prongs fit in between those clips. Compress the spring enough to release that button. Over to you, Kate.
Thanks, David. And I think there's a few questions coming through, so if I can just remind you to put them in a questions tab, we'll get to those in the end. But before we do that, I would like to introduce our guest speaker to have a broader conversation about spatial design and where potentially screens can be useful or how they can be used. So thank you very much for joining us today. And Catherine Keys is a multidisciplinary interior and spatial designer with over 10 years experience working in New Zealand, the United Kingdom and Australia. And her expertise covers interior design, architecture and event design. Having worked across a range of spatial typologies and project types, Catherine is a passionate creative and committed to pushing boundaries and utilising her strong technical base to achieve a high level of detail resolution. Catherine relishes collaboration and creative process and has a proven track record of creating award-winning and innovative spaces. I do believe we'll be looking at some beautiful renders of Langston Place, which is the most recent project Catherine has worked on, but she has also completed a project like One-to-One Exhibition Street Upgrade in Melbourne, and in London worked on Brookfield Head Office Fit Out, Canary Wharf Group Reception and Vogue Festival and Centenary. So a little bit about Langston Place, just to give a little bit of scope. It is a landmark residential development in Epping, northwest of Sydney CBD, consisting of 3 residential towers and comprising 470 apartments, each with a 2-story retail podium, creating a central public plaza. Communal areas for this place include a pool deck with a 20-metre pool, a poolside cabanas, wellness hub, sky lounge and dining spaces. A podium-level garden will include a landscape green space, barbecue facilities and play areas for children, and complemented by adjacent multi-purpose rooms for residential use, which sounds all absolutely wonderful. And I will
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Kate. Hi, everybody. Thanks for that nice introduction. So yeah, look, I'll just speak from my experience. I don't love the term expert because, you know, everyone's got a different opinion of these things. So from my perspective and from my experience, spatial design, so I studied in spatial design, not interiors. And I think the really interesting thing, as opposed to interior architecture or interior design, is the less tangible qualities that spatial design speaks to. So the fact that your experience of space is time-based, it has that sort of performative and evental element. And yeah, from my experiences where I was interested in working in the event design industry for a time, and how I bring that back to my work now, focusing more on interiors. So I think that idea of space as something that's time-based, that has those sensorial qualities, what you smell when you enter a space, what you see, how you feel. And I think, you know, especially looking at trying to get people back into spaces post-COVID and bring communities back together, you know, those things are really important to think about. Why would people come to your space? It's not just enough that it looks beautiful or it provides a function. It needs to sort of give people a feeling and offer something different. And to me, yeah, those sort of important aspects will continue to grow and continue to be interrogated. And I think, yeah, there's really exciting opportunities to push what we do with interiors within that realm. Did you want me to jump into Langston, Kate? Is that the... Oh, you're on mute, Kate.
Yes, if you'd like to give us your experience of working on the project, that would be great, just as an introduction.
Yeah, cool. So these are a few images from the Langston Place project that Kate gave an introduction to. So as Kate mentioned, it's a large multi-residential project in Epping in Sydney. When I joined the project, the apartments and the buildings had already been designed. And the interesting thing I was brought on to do was to create these communal spaces within the development. So at a certain point, the developer decided that they wanted to provide more community space back, which was really wonderful. And in fact, they, I believe, took out a couple of penthouse apartments to do that. So that idea of giving space back to the residents in a different way, I think, is really beautiful. And especially this sort of prime space, and in terms of what it offers to the development, you know, that idea that the apartment, as we all found in COVID, if you're just limited to that space, it can be quite limiting. And what else should we be offering? What else should we be giving people to make them want to come to our buildings and our spaces? And so in Langston Place, these images are of communal spaces offered up on level 22, the top level of the tallest tower. Being out in Epping, it has an absolutely incredible uninterrupted view back to Sydney City. So it's the sort of space that, you know, you've got your own space in your apartment, but most people, this is being offered as a premium space on top of that. So I think to be able to come up to a space like this and have this at your use and your disposal is, yeah, a really wonderful opportunity and an offering that sets this development apart. So the different spaces we looked at creating, where this is what we call a sky lounge. So obviously a beautiful lounge space. There's a TV hidden in behind the joinery. And so you can have guests up here. You can just come up here and chill out with a few mates, watch the footy, however you want to use it, and designing for that diversity of uses, and providing space that can be used for more intimate moments, and then larger gatherings as well. So this is the adjacent space, which is a dining and bar space. There's a show kitchen supported by a back of house or hidden kitchen, but again creating those different settings for two people to have a drink, or you can take it over and have a whole gathering party up here. So using different furniture, using different lighting, elements of screening. In this case it was more curtains. You can see on the left of the image the entrance through to the lounge space, which we were just looking at. So yeah, providing screening and different elements to allow people to use the space however they desire. And this is another shot looking back towards the kitchen. And then down on level 1, some of the other spaces Kate mentioned, so the yoga and pool space. And again, just looking at providing spaces that are really community driven, that offer something that you can't get elsewhere from your apartment, and provide settings that people really want to come into and inhabit. So it's a bit on Langston Place.
I'm sure anyone living there would be very, very lucky to have the use of those facilities.
Yeah, it looks pretty. Pretty excited to heading up to photograph it soon, so we'll get some real life shots. But it's a pretty beautiful space. So yeah, I think a fantastic offering from the developer. Yeah.
Yes, and I believe you mentioned before that it was prompted by COVID, that they've actually decided to have more communal spaces than was originally planned. But I think it's been a trend coming for a longer time where there are more communal areas offered in apartments for people to use. I wanted to get your perspective on when you're designing spaces which traditionally were for single users, so like living areas or dining areas, which were for the owner of the apartment or for the owner of the house, and now you're designing those spaces to be used by multiple users in more large apartments. What would you say is the biggest difference between how you approach the design of those spaces?
Yeah, so I think when you're designing for one person and for an apartment, it's a fairly neutral base palette that someone can really take over and make their own. When you're designing in the communal spaces, you need something that people will feel really comfortable to come into, and that will still offer a variety of uses for them. So people need to feel empowered to come up and use the space for those small conversations and gatherings, but also for bigger groups. So thinking about the variety of uses that the space will need to take on and providing different settings accordingly, and also designing and allowing for flexibility within the space. And so I think ideas of screening certain areas, providing softer moments through different finishes and different lighting, and to make people feel like they can inhabit it in a variety of ways, and are comfortable enough to come up and do so. Yeah.
And I'd imagine you have to get your creative hat on and think how different people will use the space and try to accommodate that all in one.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's all those things about spatial design that I spoke on initially that I think is really exciting. Thinking about those less tangible qualities. What will people actually do? How long will they spend there? The different whys and hows, and really interrogating the uses and a human aspect of the space beyond just those more practical considerations.
And so this is for residential. If we take that idea to commercial spaces, which have also been very much affected by recent changes, would you see as more permanent change that's coming into how commercial spaces are approached for interior design?
Yeah, so if I talk a bit about workplace, which is a field I'm fairly more experienced in. So in terms of workplace, I think we're still very much figuring out what's going to happen next, and businesses are, coming up with different flexi policies still, and I think that's a little bit to be seen how that all ends up taking shape and what becomes permanent and what doesn't. But I think in terms of general moves, the idea of I feel like desks are becoming much less important. They will always have a place, I think. But that sort of desk where you'll do more focused work and sort of hang around and collaborate and have chats, I don't think that works in the same way. So I think providing spaces that are more driven for community and collaboration, bringing people into the office, thinking about why people come, it's to collaborate, it's to get that buzz, it's to get that excitement. So really designing for that, but then making sure that is supported by spaces people can go and focus and have those Zoom meetings and the like as well. It's that balance. But I think in terms of that community and collaborative space, again, like the residential, you need to provide those moments where people can pop behind, say, a screened off area and have those smaller meetings, but then also open up and designing for that flexibility of space. So the current office project we're working on, they've given over half of the floor to community and collaborative spaces over 2 levels. They've opened up the floor with a really large tiered seat presentation space, so they're really driving for bringing their employees in to create a community environment and bringing visitors into their office as well, and having a social enterprise cafe in there too. So yeah, that sense of community and sort of an evental design, almost being able to have people in there for events and functions. And I think we'll continue to push that and see what that means in workplace and in commercial design.
Yes, it's quite a developing target. We actually hosted 2 events previously on workplace design. One was at the end of the first round of pandemic when we thought it was all over and behind us and we could celebrate, and the other one just before Christmas this year. So it's definitely a moving target and we're all very excited to see what happens. I think the good news is it does sound like the workplace will become a much better space where people want to be. I also wanted to ask, and I know you're in a different camp to perhaps like somebody like myself, after people have spent almost 2 years, a lot of private time at home by themselves, coming into these big open spaces, communal spaces, do you see there's more need to provide, some privacy? Is it a trend, or we just kind of have to get along and
yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one. Kate and I spoke about this previously, and I'm the sort of person who just loves to be in a communal environment. I've been coming into the office for a while, and I like that buzz. I understand that not everyone feels as comfortable, and we definitely need to design for all different types, and respect that people are coming at it from different positions. I do think that drive to come in for the community and the communal environment, I think that is important, and I'd hope that we're offering the types of spaces that maybe people are a bit reluctant at first, but once you've got there and you've got that feeling and that life and that buzz, that people will start to relax. But yeah, it's important to also offer spaces that do offer privacy, and also just design to good design standards. Don't make things too packed. Use contactless solutions and the like when you can as well. And just I think by providing a variety and a flexibility of spaces, it allows people to come in and do what they're comfortable within that space, just not being too prescriptive, and understanding that you're designing for people with different desires and different needs. I think that those sort of principles still stand.
So I think to sum it up, if we look at broader trends in spatial design, would it be fair to say that the trend is moving towards multi-purpose, multifunctional places that can be easily reconfigured and provide sort of sections that can be used but still are part of the greater whole, if you like, where people feel connected as a community?
Yeah, I think so. And I think the other thing that this sort of all feeds into, but just to talk about it in particular a bit more, is that ideas of responsible and sustainable design as well. So, I think these ideas of designing for community and designing for flexibility, they're inherent inherently like responsible ways to design and sustainable ways to design, and to design with you know, good products and good materials like you know, Sculptform offer with your screens product, and the idea that you can then pop out the screen and potentially reconfigure it. Like, I think that's a really beautiful concept. Yeah, and I think it really supports those what I see as the sort of trends of community and flexibility and hackability in space, and providing different opportunities, but just making sure it's really long lasting, really comfortable, and yeah, for designing spaces that people want to be, because then they'll last and be used, and yeah, provide great environments for everyone.
Thank you, Catherine. I think this will be a really nice segue into our Q&A section. So I might just get the PowerPoint so people can see everyone presenting a little bit better. And before we get, I know there's quite a few product questions. I just wanted to check with David. I know that we have a lot of technical data coming through, installation videos. Can you give us a little bit of an idea when they'll be available on the website roughly?
Yeah, good question. So we've got a lot of the information on a web page. It's just getting the structure right on the homepage, trying to lay it out. Has hit a few technical glitches. So I think it's going to be all up and running in the next week or so. However, if anyone's interested in the product and wants more information, we can definitely send them everything we got.
And we are able to provide samples at this stage, is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
Yes. So for anyone interested, I know there was a question about samples. If you have a specific project, we're more than happy to send that out. You'll get a link to request that just after the webinar, so feel free to do that. Or if you want to speak to one of our consultants, you can. A few more technical questions, so I think that might be for David or Jeremy. Can you customize to have less spacing in between the buttons on the screens?
Yes, you can. So you can have any spacing you want, pretty much, except there is a minimum. We don't recommend going any closer than 25 mils, which is pretty tight anyway. But the main reason for that is just so you can use the removal tool. But yeah, we factory set these clips here in Bendigo, and we can do it to whatever you want. We do a lot of that for working around fixtures on a building. You know, you might need to work between two different walls, and you need the spacing to work perfectly. So we do a lot of that anyway.
And in terms of the largest span, so you're talking about all trims, what's the largest span that you can achieve with this product?
Yeah, it does depend on what requirements you're working around. So obviously, if you're working around a balustrade, if it's acting as the balustrade infill, it will have an impact on that. But we have designed it so for an interior application, you can sort of span the 3 meters floor to ceiling. And if it, sometimes if you're using, particularly with solid timber, you might need to have a central threaded rod just to hold those battens, the spacing at the center. And yeah, for exteriors, it's very much dependent on your batten size and application, how much wind loads it's subject to. So we have span tables for that to help out. But yeah, generally 2 connections per blade, slab to slab. That's what we're working towards in a typical application.
Yeah, almost attempted to answer the next 2 questions. So one was from Yao Chong, so I'll just continue on that. The maximum clear span they can achieve on end mounts, particularly with barrier loading, screening off void edge.
Yeah, so it depends on your batten size. The bigger your batten size, you can get more leverage on that batten, so it has a bit of a disadvantage, but it's much stronger. So yeah, I think, for example, if you use the 40 by 100 profile, that can span the 3 meters between floor to ceiling, which is a high ceiling, and that can meet a C3 barrier requirement.
And probably worth noting that if it is something complex that you have, always speak to one of our project consultants. We do have a lot of expertise, but when it is technical, we also recommend that you get the sign-off from your engineer. Is that correct, David?
Yep, that's good.
Okay, question for Peter Lloyd. Can the screens be fixed at the base and then floating at the top with horizontal support rails only, not fixed at the top?
Yeah, that's a great question. Not at this stage. Each batten requires 2 connections. It's something we would love to work on after this, is to be able to have some additional bracket that can you can cantilever further, but at this stage the barrier rated part is between the 2 clips. Just so that's clear.
I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but if we're looking at the prototype that we have in the studio of the ballustrating product, that's not technically fixed at the top, but it has 2 fixing points. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, so you can cantilever the battens, but that cantilever can't be entire barrier. I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question correctly. Your infill is between the 2 clips. There's a clip at handrail height, a clip at the slab edge, and that's what's creating your barrier.
Well, I've got a really curveball kind of questions. Does the end mount fixing allow for top deflection? Is bowing or warping of the longer span battens over time a consideration and addressed?
Sorry, can you just repeat the first bit of the question?
Well, the first one is, does the end mount fixing allow for top deflection? But I think the main part of it is bowing or warping of the longer span battens over time a consideration, and is it addressed?
Yeah, so it depends on your application. Yes, it does. So if for your end mount, the button at the top is fixed, and at the base you've got that mortise and tenon connection, so that can compress. So if you're fixing to slab to slab, for example, you'd need to account for more of that deflection, and it can account for up to plus or minus 25 mils. So if you're expecting that to sag over time, you'd need to account for that, and you just install it as such. So if you're installing an application where you're not expecting any movement, say it's connected to a frame, you would only install with a minimum amount of clearance required to take up that movement. But if you're installing on a balcony edge, for example, is a classic situation where you get a lot of slab movement, you would allow 25 mils, so it can compress or expand by 25 mils.
I've got a question here from Vesna. What timber types are available, but perhaps you can actually take it a little bit broader in terms of finishes as well?
Yeah, so there's 3 main species we offer: spotted gum, Australian ash, and American oak are the 3 main timber types, and they come in a variety of finishes and colours. In the clear poly coatings are probably the most popular one. So that's included on our website. Obviously you can't get onto the link at the moment, but if we send it to you, you can check those out, and in a couple of weeks you can find it on our homepage of our website.
Not sure I quite understand this one, but I'll throw it out to you and you might be able to elaborate more, David. Questions from James. How does your click-on system fix to extrude an aluminium batten? Yeah,
so we've designed the extrusion to have a lot of thread engagement, so that's a problem with extrusions. Typically you only get enough, you've only got the thread engagement of the thickness of your wall, but we've got custom extrusions done where it screws into the back of the blades, and you've got that really thick bit of extrusion for the strength. So it works much the same as timber battens. It's just screwed on. For the end mount, you're fixing those end mount connections to the end caps of the extrusion. And at the bottom where you've got that mortise and tenon connection, we've got like a mortise insert that is fixed to the end cap. It's a bit hard to explain, better to show it, but it works in the same way, is the short answer.
All right, well, I think we're coming up to the end of the questions. I'll throw the last, if you have a burning questions, drop it in. Otherwise, question from James. Do the springs come pre-installed, or is that done on site?
No, it's typically done on site, just because sometimes, or you need to fix these tracks to your substrate, and that generally goes through the center of your clip. So we just don't want to have that spring already inserted where you could damage the spring as you put your screws in. So no, that's installed on site.
Thank you. So I think we'll wrap it up with the questions. Probably one good way to close it off is maybe pass it over to Jeremy. And Catherine, thank you very much for your presentation. But if you were to sum it up, what's your favorite feature of this product?
I love the it's back to that simplicity versus flexibility. So the amount of ways that it can be applied, the combination of the three configurations that it can be installed. So having the back fixing and the bottom fixing and the top fixing, and it's, then the fixed and floating, and it's all taken account of. And then really the how we've got that flexibility, but then it's a really minimal design, and it's true to our core of click-on concealed fixing. So it's just a beautiful product, which is extremely arrogant for me to say, but it's David who came up with it. So
it's fair enough. It is your
what
baby.
does Catherine think?
You should be proud of it.
She thinks that I'm just full of it, but
Did you say what do I think? No, I agree. I mean, I'm not sure if people on the call have seen the marketing, but I am one of the early users of the product, and that's what it's provided us, that flexibility, but the simplicity, being able to keep the really clean, beautiful timber lines and just show the timber off the material and keep it really pure. I really like that. I can see lots of exciting applications to come.
Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today on the call. I hope you had some lovely lunch in between as well to enjoy. As I mentioned, you will get an email that contains a replay of the recording of the video that we just watched, and also an email if you have any further questions. I know with some that we didn't get to, I'm more than happy to organise that, send out sample, organise questions with one of our project consultants. Otherwise, thanks everyone for joining us, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks all.
See ya.
See ya.